Hello, I am Arman. I am a 22-year-old high-functioning autistic, and I would like to share some of my experiences to help parents and other autistics move ahead in the autism spectrum. I used to not interact at all. I used to have no friends, nothing at all. I used to be severely stuck in my own world. And it was until about the 8th grade that things started to turn around for me. And so, let me first tell you about my website before I get into anything further. I finished this book. It's called A Boy in Wonderland, and my first chapter is up on my website, aboyinwonderland.com. And in that first chapter, I go into my world, and this is a great tool for your parents to see what your autistic child is thinking. So again, that is aboyinwonderland.com. Go and check that out. You'll find it very fascinating. But moving on here, talking about cures. The thing is that don't ever give up hope on your child. I'm not promising a cure necessarily, but I'm talking about things to help you move forward. Perhaps autism can be cured. I think it can. When you're thinking for your child, think only the best. Imagine them walking down, getting their diploma. Imagine them graduating from college. As impossible, as hard as it may sound, imagine the best. Don't listen to anybody else. A lot of people will try to tear you down and say hardly any autistics ever make it out there. Hardly any are successful. It's irreversible, blah, 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 blah. Don't listen to them. I am proof that an autistic's life can be turned around. Now, moving on, some of the things that you can do to help your child right now. Well, for one, if they haven't been tested for allergies, test them for allergies right now. A lot of autistics are allergic to milk and wheat. And what happens is that they have this digestive problem with it. And it goes down and it doesn't get digested. It enters their bloodstream. And then from their bloodstream it goes straight into their brain. So instead of being digested properly, they have that going into their brain and causes some of the severe temper tantrums and other problems that you may be experiencing. And so by getting them to stop taking milk or wheat products or whatever, their behavior usually greatly enhances. Their attention can be more focused on different aspects, and so that is one of the first things you want to do. Another thing an aspect that some parents are looking at is medicine. Now, I'm not a big proponent of medicine, but I do know that some autistics are so severe in the autism spectrum, they can't talk, whatever it may be, that if that is the case, then try out many things. Look into them. Be careful though. Don't kill your kid or anything, but if it's necessary, do so. I personally am not taking any medication, luckily. Like I said, I'm not a big proponent of it, but if it's something that, if your child is really far behind, do it. If not, if they can interact with whatever, I recommend trying different things, which I'm about to get into. Another thing, if your child is nonverbal, a thing you can try to do is getting a laptop for them or a device that they can type on and communicate. A lot of autistics these days are using such devices, and it ends up that even though they're nonverbal, they're very intelligent. If you have an autistic child, you probably know that. It ends up that a lot of autistics can actually communicate. Yes, there's a lot that can't communicate. There's a lot of autistics that don't know how to read, write, whatever the case may be. I know I couldn't read until I was in the 3rd grade, which isn't as bad as some people. Another thing to look into, well, alright, how to get into the autistic world is probably your biggest question here. You see, as you know, a lot of autistics, they're in one world, you're in another world. And so, this is the thing here. If you're lucky, let's say your autistic likes Pokemon or G.I. Joe or something. What you might try to do, you have to find a way to relate to them. So, a way to relate to them is possibly dress up as a G.I. Joe character or a Pokemon character, or if they like Transformers, try building a Transformer costume. Now, that'd be crazy, but try it. And and then you can start talking to them, communicating with them. You're like, their child's like, wow, you're a part of my world now. What you have to do to become a part of it, you have to become their world if you want to communicate with their world. That's one of the first tricks. Another thing they can try out, if you can't, I mean, come up with ideas, you know, brainstorm, 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 brainstorm. I mean, sometimes I know the autistic loves numbers. I mean, how are you going to get in? How are you going to become a number, right? I'm sure there's possibly a way, but you'd have to think about that yourself. Another thing that works very well is acting. You know, set up play dates. You know, try to get your child to act. You see, in the 8th grade, well, what happened for me, one of the big things is that in 1994, the 3 3/4 inch scale G.I. Joes were pretty much canceled because Hasbro brought out Kenner, and they came with this G.I. Joe Extreme line, but it wasn't G.I. Joe. And my focus was G.I. Joe. That was my rule. And suddenly, my rule, they stopped making it. No more toys, no more show. And so that led me to start seeing things outside of my rule. But the odds of that happening for other autistic children are probably very slim. So you're going to have to find a way to relate to them. But the good thing is that I start to see people. I start to kind of realize they exist. And then in 8th grade, I acted in a school play, and the great thing about acting is it's pretend socializing, so the autistic really isn't socializing, which is which is a lot easier way to transcend into that whole social aspect. I know, I mean, not every autistic is ready for that, but if they can communicate to an extent, you know, try to get them to act. You know, try to set up a play with some local kids or whatever you can do. Another thing that, you know, well, a lot of things that come up is, well, another thing that I heard about is parents mimicking their behavior, like the hand flapping, like that concerns a lot of parents. So first and foremost, I think hand flapping should be the least of your worries. I still flap my hands, not in public, but the good thing about hand flapping, you see, it's like it creates a euphoria. When an autistic is flapping their hands, they're really happy. I'm always happy whenever I'm flapping my hands. It's always an exciting feeling. So, I mean, if you try to stop them from doing that, you're stopping them from experiencing a lot of happiness. I mean, maybe you think, oh, it looks disgusting, they flap their hands, and everybody else does that. You know, the most important thing is to get them to start talking to people, learning how to read, learning how to write, how to be successful in the world. And I personally think that the world should accept the fact that autistics flap their hands, because, you know, it makes them happy. You know, why should we try to stop people from being happy, you know? But if you want to stop that, I did hear that a study that was done about parents mimicking that behavior whenever their child flapped, they flapped in response, and it ended up that eventually the child stopped flapping their hands. Another thing to remember about an autistic world is that it is the real world to them. You might think that it is not the real world, but to them it is. That is their world, and then you try to start pulling them outside of that world, and that, your world, is a fake world, you see. And it's full of grief, agony, rules, suffering, and, you know, it's easy to see to extent why some autistics would want to be in the world. You know, it's very simple. Usually there's, I mean, it's complex but simple at the same time. And I mean, so just keep that in mind. But like I said, relate to the rule, and that will help you transcend that thing. Another thing that comes up is repetition of words. Sometimes autistics' view of time is that time, well, my view, and I think other autistics' views, is that you look at a certain event in time, there's not really yesterday, the day before yesterday. You just kind of see something as all is happening at one time. And so you might have the autistic might have their mind on this one thing, and they still think about that. And I'm running out of time here. So the next thing I want to get into is the whole, sometimes when asking questions, you have to be very specific to an autistic. So if you ask, do you have any brothers or sisters, an autistic might say no, or they might not know what to say because they might have no brothers or no sisters. So you got to be specific with your questions. Well, that's all the time I have for now. Feel free to comment or to email me.